South and Key West, which happens to be in my district. I strongly urge all of my colleagues to vote in favor of this NDAA so that we can continue to deter our enemies, safeguard our nation, and provide for our servicemen and women. Thank you, and I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I reserve at this time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 1 minute to my friend and colleague from the Alabama delegation and also a great member of the Armed Services Committee, Mr. Strong.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. I rise today in support of the National Defense Authorization Act and to thank Chairman Mike Rogers for his leadership. The district I represent is home to Rocket City, USA, Redstone Arsenal, hundreds of service members, thousands of civilians, contractors, military retirees, and their families. This year's NDAA supports the warfighter, counters aggression imposed by the CCP, Russia, Iran, and authorizes a much-needed pay raise for our men and women in uniform with a special focus on our junior enlisted service members. In the face of global instability and unprecedented threats, this year's NDAA furthers military readiness and increases lethality. The U.S. has got to get our clip full for everything from small arms to long-range missiles. And to do this, we must provide stability and predictability to our organic and defense industrial base. America is ready to roll. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this bill.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves.
I continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield to another of our outstanding Armed Services Committee member, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, the NDAA is one of the most important
will suspend.
pieces.
How much time does each side have, please?
1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
The NDAA is one of the most important pieces of legislation we consider each year. I am proud to support it this year. First, thank you to Chairman Rogers for his outstanding leadership in crafting such a strong defense bill. The NDAA will modernize our military, improve the lives of service members, and address the threats faced by our nation. This legislation will authorize major construction projects at the Pantex plant, provide for a pathway for Shepherd Air Force Base to be designated as a technical training center of excellence, and ensure key programs like the Future Long-Range Assault Aircraft remain on track. The NDAA also reestablishes the medical officer of the Marine Corps and ensures proper medical care is provided to our United States Marines. Finally, the bill halts the dangerous proposed cuts to the Special Operations Forces of our country. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith, for the leadership in putting together such an impactful bill. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to vote yes on the NDAA. And with that, I yield back.
I continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm now pleased to yield 2 minutes to the ranking member of the House Subcommittee on Cyber, Information Technologies, and Innovation, Mr. Khanna of California.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Ranking Member Smith, and for your leadership. I also want to thank Chair Rogers, who has conducted the committee with bipartisanship. I got to travel with him. He's fun to travel with. And my opposition here is not with disrespect to either the chairman or the ranking member. As people know, I have been concerned about the Pentagon budget getting almost to $1 trillion. And I'm concerned about the 5 primes and the amount of cost overruns they've had. When you look at the F-35s and Lockheed, a contract that has been delayed, that has almost $200 billion in cost overruns. When you look at the IG report about Boeing getting $150,000 for soap dispensers. When you look at the reports about electric breast pumps being charged to our military for $1,400 when other places you can get it for $200. There is a lot of waste in this budget. And my hope is actually with the committee that we will engage with Elon Musk, engage with DOGE on this issue to have a Pentagon budget that is going to be more modernized, where the American people will get their value of their tax dollars, where we can have more competition for the five primes and have a strong national security with a lower budget. I hope we can do that in a bipartisan way. My hope is that Musk, what he did with SpaceX in disrupting Lockheed and Boeing with the ULA, maybe finds areas that we can disrupt other five primes. So I will oppose and vote no on this budget with the hope that next year we can find cost savings. I yield back.
Gentleman from Washington reserves. Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to one of the senior members of the Armed Services Committee, my friend, Mr. Wilson of South Carolina.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very grateful to support the National Defense Authorization Act. I appreciate so much the leadership of Chairman Mike Rogers and Ranking Member Adam Smith for their diligent work for providing this crucial National Defense Authorization Act for peace through strength. This is a bipartisan legislation including critical provisions for the Palmetto State, including its military bases and critical missions at the Savannah River site. As a 31-year veteran of the Army National Guard, myself, along with 3 sons who have served in Iraq, Egypt, and Afghanistan, I especially appreciate this legislation which supports the deployment of the National Guard to the southern border, cuts inefficient programs and bureaucracy, and guts woke programs at the Department of Defense. It reaffirms congressional support for our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific by countering Chinese Communist Party influence, by fully funding military information operations assistance to the region. It also ensures Israel has adequate stocks of air defense interceptors to defend itself against the regime in Tehran. War criminal Putin and dictators like Assad must be deterred from invasions. Additionally, the NDAA fully supports and requires plutonium pit production at the Savannah River site and Los Alamos National Laboratory. It's clear the National Nuclear Security Administration must do everything possible to restore this vital capability as quickly as possible without delay for peace through strength. I urge my colleagues to support the NDAA. I yield back.
And I continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself 2 minutes. I want to address a little bit the concerns about the size of the Pentagon budget and the efficiency and effectiveness of this. First of all, it's important to point out that the defense budget, as a percentage of GDP, is the lowest that it has been since after World War II. As our budget has grown and ballooned collectively, that has primarily been because of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, a variety of different other programs, all of which I enthusiastically support. But as a percentage of GDP, we're actually spending less on defense now than we have, as I said, at any point since World War II. So the notion that the defense budget is ballooning out of control doesn't take into account inflation and growth. We are at a more reasonable place than some portray, first of all. Second of all, we keep hearing, oh, they failed another audit. Well, what's actually happening is we're getting better on that point. You were not going to fix the audit problems that the Pentagon had like 6, 7 years ago in a year or 2 or even 5. But just to give you a couple of ideas, multiple different agencies within the Pentagon are now passing their audits, whereas they didn't before, including the United States Marine Corps. And then another decent measure of this, the Department of the Navy broadly has not passed its audit. But 5 or 6 years ago, they were only 5% clean, and now they're 80% clean. So I don't want to leave the public with the mistaken impression that we're ignoring this problem or not making any progress on it. We are, and a big part of the reason we're making progress on it is because of the leadership of the House Armed Services Committee. Under Mr. Rogers, previously under me, before that under Mac Thornberry, this has been a priority for us in the House and the Senate for some time. We're making progress. We are not ignoring the problem, and it's not a pass-fail, it's a matter of improvement. We are optimistic in another 2 or 3 years we'll get to that happy day when the entire Pentagon budget can pass that audit, but we had a big hole to dig out of, and we're making progress on digging out of said hole, and I want to make sure people are aware of that. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to Ms. McClain of Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Rogers. The world is on fire, And now more than ever, we must ensure we have the premier fighting force in the world. With our enemies encroaching, we cannot afford unnecessary diversions. This bill builds on House Republicans' progress to return our military to lethal fighting force and away from woke ideologies that seek to divide and distract. To confront the 21st century battlefield, we must invest in operations and technologies that deter our enemies and support our regional allies. Some of these state-of-the-art technologies are developed in Michigan's 9th District, and I was proud to ensure initiatives in this year's bill to bolster our national security and our workforce. The defense of our nation and safety of all Americans should always be our highest priority. I urge my colleagues to support this year's NDAA so we deliver mission-critical results. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm now pleased to yield 1.5 minutes to Ms. Takuda of Hawaii, a member of the House Armed Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the last-minute effort to deny critical health care to military children diagnosed with gender dysphoria is a shameful attack on military families who deserve better from their elected representatives. Our military families deserve our support for the sacrifices they make, not our intervention into their deeply personal health care decisions, and certainly not those involving their children. For transgender people, gender-affirming care is health care. To deny them this care is to deny that they exist. The reality is they do. And yes, there are thousands of military families with transgender children. 15,000 transgendered individuals wear the uniform. They deserve, like any child in our country, to be their true, authentic selves and receive the care that helps them to live freely. As a mother, I cannot idly stand by and vote to deny health care to children who need it. Nor can I stand by while my colleagues use transgender people to score cheap political points. To pass a bill dedicated to the quality of life of military families while stripping away health care from their children, it's not just ironic. It's twisted, it's cruel, and it's plain wrong. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting against the NDAA so we can remove this discriminatory provision and truly, truly stand with our military families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I inquire as to how much time I have remaining?
Gentleman from Alabama has 11 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 1 minute to gentleman from Guam, Mr. Moylan.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I urge my colleagues to support the people of Guam by voting yes on the 2025 NDAA. Guam is in the Indo-PACOM area. This bill authorizes $4 billion for economic activity on Guam, $2 billion planned for 2025. This is a historic investment for Guam. It supports our infrastructure. It defends our community, and it protects our nation. There's $600 million for Guam missile defense, protecting my constituents from direct PRC and North Korean threats. Additionally, it includes $100 million for Marine Corps Drive, our public roadway on Guam, for upgrades for easier access for our civilians and our military. Also, it recognizes Guam's history, which directs the DoD to provide a report regarding the use of Agent Orange on Guam. It will clarify how Agent Orange was used on the island, and it would start the groundwork for corrective action that is desperately needed. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your support of Guam, and I encourage my colleagues to vote yes for this year's 2025 NDAA. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
I reserve and am prepared to close at this time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia.
Gentleman is recognized.
Well, thank you, Chairman Rogers, for the time. Mr. Speaker, this will be my last floor speech as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and I'm beyond proud that the last few minutes of my time on this floor is dedicated to our troops. I rise today in support of the NDAA, but I rise above all things in support of our service members and their families. During my 4.5 years as a member of Congress, my office has championed this effort to get our troops off of food stamps and above the poverty line. At times it felt very difficult, but we have ultimately followed through with this commitment and this promise to our folks in uniform, especially our junior enlisted personnel who just a couple of years ago were making only $22,000 a year as a base salary. My historic Military Spouse Licensing Relief Act was signed into law in February of 2023 and allows our active duty troops' spouses to cross-deck their professional licenses across all 50 states when they move, without having to spend thousands of dollars and potentially years getting recertified. It was a huge victory for our service members and their families, but it didn't solve the pay problems that our personnel were having. Now, this week, we will pass this year's NDAA, which includes our historic 14.5% pay raise for our junior enlisted. And this, in combination with the defense appropriation bills over the last 2 years, represents the single largest pay raise for our enlisted troops in our nation's history. I want to thank Chairman Rogers and Chairman Calvert from the Appropriations Committee for truly driving this and enabling this. And lastly, I want to thank God for this imperfect union that we call America. She is only held together by the stitches sewn by the men and women and their families who serve in our military every day and in the future, and held together by the veterans who served in the past. May we never forget their sacrifices, for they are the ones who have delivered this great gift called the United States of America. I urge all members of Congress to support our military in this NDAA. And with that, Mr. Speaker, go Navy, beat Army, and I yield back.
Chairman yields.
I thank the Speaker. This time I'd like to yield.
Reserve. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This time I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Virginia, a fine member of the Armed Services Committee, Ms. Kiggins.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to voice my support for the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025. Our men and women in uniform put their lives on the line for our country, and they should be compensated accordingly. As a former Navy helicopter pilot, a Navy spouse, and now Navy mom, I'm laser focused on addressing obstacles faced by our service members. I was proud to serve on the House Armed Services Committee Quality of Life panel, where we addressed issues for our service members, including increases to military pay, housing, healthcare, childcare, and spouse support. Pay is one of the many quality of life improvements needed across the board for our service members. That's why I fought hard to include a pay raise for our junior enlisted service members in the final text. The 14.5% pay increase for E1 through E4s will ensure military salaries can remain competitive with the private sector. At a time when our world grows more dangerous every day, America needs to prioritize our warfighters and ensure we can maintain a ready, capable, and lethal fighting force. It is imperative our military men and women earn a salary befitting of the service they provide to our country. Today's legislation is exactly what we need to deter our adversaries, improve the quality of life for our service members, and revitalize our defense industrial base. I'm confident that passing the NDAA will be a significant win for the young men and women in the military and their families, our national security, and our entire country. I'm always proud to advocate for our service members and their quality of life in Congress.
Gentleman's time is expired.
And I will just close by saying, as my colleague did, go Navy and beat Army. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields.
Reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
I continue to reserve. Thank you.
Gentleman reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This time I'd like to yield 1 minute to Mr. Nunn.
I'd like to thank the chairman for his hard work on this year's National Defense Authorization Act. To my Navy allies who have just spoken prior, I'm glad to have a little air support in the room here as a combat veteran with the U.S. Air Force. I want to thank all of our men and women currently serving in uniform. Your hard work is not only the reason that we do this, but it is the best defense we have for our nation. I'm grateful this bill contains our effort to lead with real technology advancements in our National Defense Authorization Act, including our greatest ally, Israel, which is why I'm proud that our portion of the NDAA was included. This effort will break through traditional procurement barriers to allow partnership that will focus on both efficiency in weaponry, technology, and innovation, as well as lethality to be able to defend our country, both on the field as well as modernizing the future of warfare and national defense. But I am most emphatic that the leadership of this bill truly recognizes our junior enlisted force, one of the most professional in the world. As a commander, it is a privilege to be able to sign on to the largest pay increase for our junior troops ever at nearly 15%. With that, Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of this bill and thank the chairman for his leadership.
I thank the gentleman. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves.
I am prepared. I continue to reserve.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, this time I'd like to yield 1 minute to Dr. Murphy of North Carolina.
Thank you, Representative Rogers. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the National Defense Authorization Act for FY 2025 to fund our military and take care of our troops. It's my honor to represent our nation's greatest warfighters at Camp Lejeune and Marine Corps Air Stations Cherry Point and New River. This legislation robustly funds and modernizes our armed forces to prepare us for threats abroad, improves the quality of life for our service members and their families, and refocuses the Pentagon's mission on national security and away from political distractions. The package will strengthen our military and its lethality, deliver pay raises for our troops, reduce health care wait times, improve access to child care, and support employment for military spouses. Further, it will eliminate woke programs, gut political bureaucracy, and support the deployment of National Guard troops to assist our Border Patrol. North Carolina's 3rd District will greatly benefit from the $208 million in funding secured for military construction projects on our bases and $50 million in impact aid that will help our military community. I support this year's National Defense Authorization Act and urge my colleagues to do the same. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
And I reserve.
And I believe the gentleman is prepared to close at this point.
I am.
Thank you very much. I will yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. And I don't really have anything more to add than what I said in the opening statement, so I won't belabor the point. It is in so many ways a very good bill that was worked through the process. I regret that we have injected, again, that partisan wedge issue into it. It is a controversial topic, trying to figure out what medical treatment transgender youth or youth experiencing gender dysphoria should get. But I worry in some instances that there is a denial of the existence of the condition. It is an absolute fact that some minors experience gender dysphoria. Now, I guess the one thing I didn't say in my opening statement that's worth adding, on TRICARE there are about 1.8 million dependents. The estimates that I've gotten, and they're a little fuzzy because they won't give specifics for, I think, some obvious reasons, are that roughly 4,000 children are being treated out of that 1.8 million, and not all 4,000 of those children being treated are receiving the treatments that are being prohibited in this bill. So we're talking about a small number of young people, but we are restricting access to their health care based on our opinion, not based on the opinion of the U.S. medical community, and that, I think, is a mistake. But again, I want to close on a positive note. I again thank Chairman Rogers, HASC Armed Services Committee, all of the staff. I didn't thank the Senate in my opening remarks either. I suppose we have to. Yeah. All kidding aside, the Senate was, good to work with on this process, and I think ultimately HASC and SASC met their requirements and did what we've done for 63 consecutive years in working together on a bipartisan, bicameral bill with the overwhelming bulk of the focus on what is best for the servicemen and women that defend our country and that we are so proud of. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Washington yields back. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself the remainder of my time. I want to thank the ranking member. It's obvious from anybody listening to this, he's very bright and very articulate, but he's also just a great friend and a tremendous partner in working together in a bipartisan fashion year in and year out as we work on these important issues. And I appreciate his help so much in fashioning this bill. And I will begrudgingly go ahead and acknowledge our Senate counterparts have been pretty great to work with too. Senator Reid and Senator Wicker are just great guys and have been real partners as we've gotten this bill to this point. I want to thank the Armed Services Committee staff as well as the leadership staff the rules and the CBO, Legislative Council, the Parliamentarian's Office, and the Clerk's Office for all their hard work in helping us get to where we are. I also want to thank Speaker Johnson for his leadership in moving this bill forward. Mr. Speaker, the bill before us represents a bicameral compromise. Each corner has some wins and some losses, but the totality of the bill deserves support from all members. This bill will help revitalize our defense industrial base. It will build ready, capable, and lethal fighting force we need to deter China and our other adversaries. And it will provide historic improvements in the quality of life of our service members and their families. I urge all members to support it, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Alabama yields back. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 1612, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion by the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Rogers. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to, and without objection, for what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
I'd request a recorded vote, please.
Does the gentleman request the yeas and
The
nays?
yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays have been requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. The motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 9716 and the motion to concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 5009 with an amendment. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the remaining electronic votes will be conducted as a 5-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 9716, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
Union Calendar Number 700, H.R. 9716, a bill to amend the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974 to require the Congressional Budget Office to provide baseline updates and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 407, the nays are 0, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the motion to concur in the Senate amendment on H.R. 5009 with an amendment offered by the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Rogers, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Mr. Rogers of Alabama moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment to the bill H.R. 5009 with an amendment consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 118-52.
The question is on agreeing to the motion to concur. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 281 and the nays are 140. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
The House will be in order. Am I on? The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a concurrent resolution and ask unanimous consent for its immediate consideration in the House.
The gentleman will suspend. The House will be in order. The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 134, concurrent resolution directing the Clerk of the House of Representatives to make a correction in the enrollment of the bill H.R. 5009.
Is there objection to the consideration of the concurrent resolution? Without objection, the concurrent resolution is agreed to, and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the proceedings during the former member program be printed in the congressional record, and that all members and former members who spoke during the proceedings have the privilege of revising and extending their remarks.
Without objection. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection, the chair lays before the House a message.
To the Congress of the United States, Section 202D of the National Emergency Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless within 90 days prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with this provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice stating that the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13818 of December 20th, 2017 is to continue in effect beyond December 20th, 2024. The prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside the United States continue to threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. Human rights abuse and corruption undermine the values that form an essential foundation of stable, secure, and functioning societies, have devastating impacts on individuals, weaken democratic institutions, degrade the rule of law, perpetuate violent conflicts, facilitate the activities of dangerous persons, undermine economic markets, and continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. Therefore, I have determined that it is necessary to continue the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13818 with respect to serious human rights abuse and corruption. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., The White House, December 11th, 2024.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs and ordered printed. The chair lays before House a message.
To the Congress of the United States, Section 202D of the National Emergency Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless, within 90 days prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with this provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice stating that the national emergency with respect to global illicit drug trafficking declared in Executive Order 14059 of December 15, 2021 is to continue in effect beyond December 15, 2024. The trafficking into the United States of illicit drugs, including fentanyl and other synthetic opioids, is causing the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans annually, as well as countless more non-fatal overdoses with their own tragic human toil. Drug cartels, transnational criminal organizations, and their facilitators are their primary sources of illicit drugs and precursor chemicals that fuel the current opioid epidemic, as well as drug-related violence that harms our communities. International drug trafficking, including the illicit production, global sale, and widespread distribution of illegal drugs, the rise of extremely potent drugs such as fentanyl and other synthetic opioids, as well as the growing role of internet-based drug sales continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. Therefore, I have determined that it is necessary to continue the national emergency declared in Executive Order 14059 with respect to global illicit drug trafficking. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., The White House, December 11th, 2024.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs and ordered printed. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, sir, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on December 11, 2024 at 1:00 p.m. that the Senate agreed to Senate Concurrent Resolution 43, that the Senate passed Senate 4776, that the Senate agree to relative to the death of the Honorable Fred R. Harris, former United States Senator from the state of Oklahoma, Senate Resolution 925, that the Senate pass without amendment H.R. 1097, H.R. 3254, H.R. 3797, H.R. 3801, H.R. 6829, H.R. 6960, H.R. 7872. Signed sincerely, Kevin F. McCumber, Acting Clerk.
Refer to on 4 and like that. Okay. The House will be in order. The chair respectfully requests that the members take their conversations outside. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Arkansas is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the life of renowned Arkansas Democrat-Gazette sports reporter Bob Holt, who passed away Wednesday, December 4th, after collapsing following the Arkansas football game against the Missouri Tigers, his alma mater. Since 1981, Bob covered the Razorbacks and sports across Arkansas, bringing every game to life in the unique way that only Bob Holt could. He was a titan of the media industry, revered for his ability to get an answer to any question, all while maintaining the utmost respect from coaches, players, and his fellow reporters. Bob leaves a resounding legacy in his wake, and his mark in the Arkansas sports community will go down in history. Not only was Bob an unparalleled reporter, he was a faithful and loyal friend. Matt Jones, a friend and colleague of Bob's for many years, said, "If the world was full of Bob Holts, it would be a lot better world, a lot kinder world, a lot more peaceful world. It would be a world that laughs a lot more, and it would be a much, much better place." My prayers go out to his family, friends, and all Arkansans mourning our loss. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, for millions of our fellow Americans, Thanksgiving is about returning home, a time to gather with loved ones in a place both familiar and safe. On my way back to Hawaii for the Thanksgiving recess, with long delays and packed airports and planes, it hit me. For too many of our Maui Ohana, this is but a sliver of what they have been trying to do for the past 16 months. They're just trying to go home. A week before Thanksgiving, I joined the Folau Mo'aloa Ohana as they became the first family to move into the new Kilohana temporary group housing site in Lahaina. By this spring, 167 modular units will house survivors and their families. While these housing units can never replace what was lost, we hope they will soon be made homes by the people, the love, the hopes and dreams that will fill the space between these walls. A big mahalo to FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the State of Hawaii, Maui County, and all our contractors and community partners for their hard work and dedication. Thanks to them, families like the Folau Mo'eloas are moving in months ahead of schedule to a place where they can look ahead to the future and to what this community will one day be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the Avon Marching Band and the Gold Schools Marching Band, who won both the 24 Bands of America Grand National Championship and the ISSMA State Finals for the second year in a row. Avon High School's marching band Also won all 3 special award categories at the 2024 Bands of America Championship, taking home the awards for Outstanding Music Performance, Outstanding Visual Performance, and Outstanding General Effect Performance. I want to congratulate the students on the 2 big wins this year, and I'm proud of their outstanding talent, perseverance that has led to their continued successes and national dominance. I also want to thank the parents, teachers, directors, and volunteers for their hard work and dedication to this program. They couldn't have done it without you. Congratulations again to the Avon Marching Black and Gold, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today the House passed the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025. I voted for the legislation as this body upholds again the over 60-year bipartisan tradition ensuring partisan politics does not put America's national security at risk. As a senior member of the Defense Appropriations Committee, I greatly appreciate the bipartisan work of the Defense Authorizing Committee. Their collaboration has resulted in a bill that supports our patriotic service members at home and abroad. And the legislation meets that call through its 14.5% pay raise for junior enlisted service members and a 4.5% increase for all other members of our military. Our state of Ohio is home to over 31,000 service members, including those on active duty, reserve, and National Guard duty. They have earned this much-needed increase in pay at a time when too many of our citizens are struggling to afford basic needs. This legislation also authorizes $121 million for defense-related upgrades in Ohio to further strengthen avenues of collaboration between the Department of Defense and Ohio's installations. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Kwanzaa to our dear service members who are serving liberty at home and abroad. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I rise today to congratulate the 2024 SEC champions, my MBA alma mater, the University of Georgia Bulldogs. During a thrilling overtime game last Saturday, the Dogs defeated the University of Texas Longhorns 22-19. This exciting win marks the 15th time the University of Georgia will bring home the SEC championship trophy to Athens. Congratulations to all the talented young men who put their everything into the game, but especially to the 9th District's own quarterback, Gunnar Stockton from Rabun County, who came off the bench to help lead the Georgia Bulldogs to victory. I also want to recognize the other incredibly talented Dogs from Georgia's 9th District who helped clinch another SEC title. Well done to Buford's KJ Bolden, Jake Pope, and Merrick Briley, as well as to Gainesville's own Dan Jackson. Congratulations to the entire University of Georgia football team and coaching staff, led by the legendary coach, Kirby Smart. Go Dogs, let's bring home another national championship. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I strongly support Barton College's initiative to construct a new health sciences building on their Wilson campus. The initial funding phase is estimated at $19 million, and it will be a wonderful investment. It is essential to ensure a more robust talent pipeline for North Carolina's healthcare industry. Given the health disparities across Eastern North Carolina, Barton College aims to ensure a brighter future for our state's healthcare system and the residents who rely on it daily for their mental and physical well-being. A new health sciences building will provide additional labs, research space, and improved technology for students, which will yield huge dividends for Wilson County and Eastern North Carolina. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from West Virginia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor my good friend, Delegate Eric Householder, as he retires from the West Virginia House of Delegates after 14 years of service. For the last 2 years, he has served as the House Majority Leader and previously chaired the House Finance Committee. As a small business owner, Eric ran for elected office to fight back against the job-crushing regulations coming out of Charleston and reform our tax code. With the help of Eric's leadership, West Virginians have less regulation, lower taxes, and educational freedom. I'm proud to bestow upon Delegate Householder my Congressional Patriot Award for excellence, leadership, volunteerism, and selflessness, virtues without which our republic cannot thrive. While his time in the House of Delegates has come to an end, I know that Delegate Householder is not done serving our state. I thank Delegate Householder for his years of service and his tireless efforts to improve the lives of West Virginians. I wish him all the best in his future endeavors, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize some of the 637,000 millennials who make up 28% of Houston's population. These remarkable individuals are reshaping our city through the innovation, leadership, and commitment to excellence. Leaders like Danielle Keys Best, a dynamic force in real estate and public service. She has elevated our community through her work with campaigns, organizations like Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated, and the Houston Black Real Estate Association. In construction, Julian Paul Johnson Jr., Vice President at Skilled Construction, exemplifies progress with his dedication to process improvement and his recognition as a 2019 Urban Land Institute Young Leader. We also have individuals like Jose Torre, a construction entrepreneur, and Emily Anasi, an immigrant excelling at logistics. They remind us of the diverse talents driving our city and our nation forward. I like to celebrate legal powerhouse Bianca Calderon de la Chica, whose advocacy dominates Houston's highways, and Alva Catan, an entrepreneur redefining success. Finally, I recognize Uzar Hassan, owner of Millennial Magazine, who highlights Houston's creativity and our future. Together, these individuals demonstrate that America's largest generation is ready to take up the mantle. As an ex-centennial, I recognize their achievement and encourage their future to make our community a better place to live, work, and play. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Seeking unanimous consent to address the House 1 minute. Revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The National Defense Authorization Act takes an important step to protect children from harmful and irreversible medical procedures. It includes a provision to permanently ban the Department of Defense from providing minors with medical treatments for gender dysphoria, such as hormone therapies and puberty blockers that can result in sterilization. Children should have the chance to grow up without being subjected to experimental procedures that can cause permanent damage to their bodies and futures. These are minors we're talking about here. And what business is it of the Department of Defense to be engaging in this? These treatments are life-altering and their long-term effects are still unknown. The federal government has no business funding or endorsing such practices, particularly when they involve children. This provision ensures taxpayer dollars aren't used to promote controversial and harmful treatments for minors. Including this ban in the NDA reflects a commitment to common sense and the protection of our nation's youth and focuses the defense on defending the homeland. It's a step in the right direction for safeguarding the futures for these children. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate yet another bipartisan win for the city of Houston this week. Within the award of bill the House passed yesterday, there were several important priorities that Congresswoman Fletcher and I spearheaded to ensure not another catastrophic flooding event like Hurricane Harvey ever happens again. Specifically, the Army Corps of Engineers is now statutorily required to finish one of the most important studies facing Texas, the Buffalo Bayou Tributaries Resiliency Study. Without the completion of this study, construction of a tunnel underneath our city will never be built to route floodwater away from my friends and neighbors in TX38 and TX7 and back into the Gulf of Mexico. I'd like to personally thank Congresswoman Fletcher and the brilliant staff in the Water Resources and Environmental Subcommittee for all their hard work to ensure Houstonians can remain resilient in the face of another disaster. I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the first ever Energy and Commerce Committee Chairwoman and my friend, Kathy McMorris Rogers, for her excellent work in leading the most bipartisan committee in Congress. Under her leadership, the committee has worked effectively, efficiently, and in a bipartisan manner to advance legislation that will improve the life of all Americans. Chair Rogers introduced bipartisan legislation that would provide necessary resources for Down syndrome research. She has also led us in combating the Biden administration's damaging overregulation and war on American energy. I was proud to work with her on the ADVANCE Act to enhance our civil nuclear leadership, which is now law. She also held insightful hearings on TikTok and the threat that it poses to our youth and our national security. Her time as the chair will enhance the United States and its citizens, and we will surely miss her. We surely wish her well in her retirement. Thank you, Kathy, for all your work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I request permission to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate the leadership of my dear friend, Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers. Serving alongside Kathy has been an honor. She is not only a fierce advocate for her constituents, but a principled leader with a servant heart. As the first chairwoman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Kathy has shown what it means to always put the needs of the American people first. But beyond her professional accomplishments, Kathy's faith is what I admire most. Whether it is by sharing an encouraging comment or during prayer walks around the Capitol, Kathy has strived to honor the Lord every day. After I was elected to Congress, I had the opportunity to meet with Kathy, who at the time was chairwoman of the Republican Conference Committee. It was during that meeting that Kathy made me feel like I belonged here. Kathy McMorris Rogers is special. During my time serving in Congress, Kathy has become a great friend and a great example of what it means to lead with grace and faith. Even though we will miss her here, I'm excited for what the Lord has in store for her. May God bless her and may He continue to guide her steps in this next season of life. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to recognize Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers, who is retiring at the end of the 118th Congress. In 2004, the two of us came to the House in the same class, and we've been friends throughout our time here. Kathy has the distinction of being the first woman to give birth 3 times while in the House. She's a visible and vocal leader within the disabilities community, and her advocacy is inspired by her son, Cole, who was born with Down syndrome. I thank the gentlewoman for her years of service to this great institution, to her constituents in Washington's 5th Congressional District, and to the American people. May God continue to bless her, her husband, Brian, and Cole, Grace, and Bryn, their 3 children, as she enters a well-deserved retirement. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 60 seconds and revise.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, for those of us from the Valley of the Sun, the Phoenix, Arizona area, there's an excitement around us. Our college team, Arizona State University, that was